Hi guys, welcome to Bark and Jack. I am Adrian and today we are in a Rolls-Royce Wraith. I know what you're thinking, why is he posting a car video on quite clearly a watch channel? But sometimes in life, opportunities come your way and you've just got to grab them. Let me explain how this has come about. Basically, a viewer works at Rolls-Royce and he sent me a WhatsApp message saying, I work at Rolls-Royce, would you like to come and have a tour of the factory? I said, fuck yeah. Well, I was a bit more polite than that. But I grabbed that opportunity, it was an incredible experience, and I thought I'd take you guys with me. Now, I've not come from a background of money, so being catapulted into this world of proper luxury, serious high-end Uber luxury, was an eye-opener. It was incredible how, I'm going to say the other half live, but how the tiny amount of the other half live. So I spent time with some of the PR guys from Rolls-Royce. They took me into their clients, a lounge that they used for their clients. This place had some really cool shit about. They had a nice vintage Gibson Les Paul just as part of an ornament sitting in the corner. They had the whole array of how the spirit of ecstasy is created from this quite a rough mold to this beautifully shiny emblem. We then went into this kind of dream room where you start to think about your car and what you want it to look like. Their whole kind of idea around building cars is if the client wants it, we'll make it happen. And the stories that they have to go along with that are really quite insane, but also quite amazing at the same time. It's a weird kind of head fuck around the kind of understanding of money in my world compared to money in these people's worlds, and how they apply it, and how if they want something, it doesn't matter how much it costs, it gets done. For example, one of the stories was a client wanted a really shiny paint job. They wanted a paint job that really jumped out and had a sparkle to it. And Rolls-Royce just couldn't find a paint job that had that right amount of sparkle. And so they ended up grinding down diamonds and mixing diamond powder in with this paint. And this wasn't just shiny glass. This was actual diamonds ground down into the paint, which is just crazy. And it's believed that this is the most expensive paint job ever. So it's weird to be shown that kind of that world where money is just a completely different object, and a situation where it is pretty much limitless. Now I kind of get it when you're spending. I kind of get it is insane at the same time. It's that weird kind of thing that contradicts itself. It kind of put yourself into their shoes of having that amount of money. If you're going to buy that level of car, if you're going to spend £200,000-300,000 on a car, you want it to stand out. And this is how you make it stand out, is by having your own custom paint job. The factory was a lot smaller than what I thought it would be. But then when you think about it, they don't actually make that many cars. It's not a mass-produced unit. It's not like Mercedes or BMW where they're churning out loads and loads of cars. And I was amazed at how hands-on a lot of the processes were. They had robots to maneuver the cars around, the chassis around, and manipulate them. They had these things that could rotate the whole car and flip it over. But then everything else was just done by hand. The roof, some of the roofs have this kind of starry effect. And all of that is done by hand. Each one is completely individual. This sounds like a bloody advert for them. But it was just amazing seeing how hands-on all that stuff was. Something that stood out as a bit bizarre. I understand it from a commercial standpoint, but translating it into the watch world, it felt a bit weird. So Rolls-Royce is owned by BMW. Rolls-Royce use BMW engines. They are adjusted for Rolls-Royce. In the watch world, it would be weird for this level of watchmaker to use someone else's movement. From a commercial standpoint, it clearly isn't feasible for them to make their own engines. I'm sure the cars would probably cost a lot more. So it was a weird contrast and a weird difference. So after the factory tour, the chap who was with me, he very casually came over and just handed me the keys to a Rolls-Royce Wraith.
V12 and it has 624 horsepower. 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. And top speed of 155 miles an hour. I'm probably not going to go above 24. It's so scary driving this thing. One, because it's worth so much money, and two, because it's it's quick. It has a beautifully smooth gearbox. The drive itself is incredibly smooth, but this thing is huge. It's so long. It's probably about 4 meters long, and the bonnet just goes on forever. So it's quite tricky to judge where you are to get the whole positioning thing right. Despite the size of this thing, I mean, 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds is pretty hot. Put your foot down, this thing fucking goes for it. That would have been a really useful lay-by to turn around in.
Every element of this car was just absolutely nuts. From the speed, from the size, from the cost, just down to the little knobs and switches and buttons and everything. Everything that you touched just felt great. Apart from the gear stick, I didn't like the gear stick. That was weird. It was like this thing that you just clicked up and down, and I kept feeling like I was going to pull it off. But everything else, all the little knobs and switches to make the air come on, and when you turned the air conditioning on, you couldn't really hear it. It just had this little puff as if someone had just opened a little gas canister. Luxury in the car world is slightly different to luxury in the watch world. A luxurious watch could simply be a well-made product by a prestigious company that is made from a precious metal. It's not really around the whole thing of features and benefits. Whereas in the car world, or certainly within this car, it is all about features and benefits. For example, rich people, they don't want to be leaning out and having to pull their own door closed when the driver's not around. So Rolls-Royce have built this little button to shut your door for you. Now, usually I could just pass that little feature off as there's not a real tangible benefit to me. However, it was raining on the day and yeah, I didn't want to get my arm wet, so I just press a button and that door shuts for me. Another thing is, and Rolls-Royce are actually known for this, is they have umbrellas hidden in the doors, so you or your driver has easy access to an umbrella. Now they've gone a step further and actually heat that little compartment and extract the damp air so that your umbrella is nice and dry. It was huge, it was fast, but it drove really tightly, it drove really nicely, you could just throw it anywhere, but it was absolutely incredible. The whole thing worked, the whole marketing worked, they'd sold me on the customer journey, I now aspire to have this sort of car. The average house price in the UK is around £230,000. This car costs more than the average house in the UK, which is just nuts. It's incredible that there's a market for that sort of thing, and it's scary and also inspiring that there's that amount of money in the world. But to bring this back to watches, it's really interesting how a lot of people who aren't familiar with the watch world, a lot of people in the watch world actually, label those who buy watches like Rolex or Patek or any high-end watch, they label them as having more money than sense. And I'm not saying everyone who buys a Rolex loves watches. I'm not saying everyone who buys Pateks loves watches. A lot of people just want to spend a lot of money and have that luxury item. And it's more about the luxury and the status that it brings as opposed to the love for the watch and the mechanics that are inside it. And I'm not saying that everyone who buys Rolls-Royces loves cars. I'm sure there's a good amount of people who buy Rolls-Royce cars because they just want to spend a shitload of money on a car. They want that status, they want that prestige. But also there are people who just love cars. That's what they want to spend their money on. It's easy for me to look at someone who's got a car that I can't afford. Most cars I can't afford. But it's easy for me to look at them and label them as having more money than sense. But actually, is that just a coping mechanism for us because they've got something that we can't afford? It's an interesting mindset, and it was interesting to be shoved into that massive world of luxury and a different world that was completely alien to me. I hope you guys were able to enjoy this video. I know there's a good chunk of you who are into your cars. Whenever I've done my walking around London and spotted cars, a lot of you guys have interacted with that side of things. I do really like cars, and this isn't going to be a common thing unless car companies want me to play around with their cars, because I'll do that. I'll drive someone else's car. I just wanted to share this stuff with you guys. I had a great time, and thanks so much to the guy who helped set this up and the whole team at Rolls-Royce who organised for this to happen, especially for me to drive a bloody Wraith. That was just insane. If you like watch stuff, then hit subscribe down the bottom. If you're new to the watch world and you've come here because it was a car video, then check out my other videos because it might get you into watches, and I'm sorry if it does because it's quite an addictive thing to get into. If you want to get yourself a nice NATO strap, then jump over to barkandjack.shop. If you want to read some articles about watches or check out my old videos, go to barkandjack.com. Check me out on Instagram at barkandjack. And do all that YouTube stuff. Subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, double tap the thumbs down button, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.